Okay, welcome back to the third talk on renal physiology. Here I'm going to talk a bit about electrolytes. So just to remind ourselves before we go anywhere, all cells in the body have sodium potassium ATPase on the basal side, which basically sodium potassium ATPase, which throws 3 sodium out and pulls 2 potassium in. So 3 sodium out, 2 potassium in, which means they are low in sodium, they're high in potassium, and they're negative because they lost 3 positive sodium and gain only 2 positive potassium. So in this one, let's talk about potassium and hydrogen and bicarbonate. So just all I want you to remember is hyperkalemia leads to metabolic acidosis. Metabolic acidosis leads to hyperkalemia. These two go hand in hand. And we'll go to hypokalemia and acidosis in a while. So let's see how does that happen. Let's say you have metabolic acidosis due to any cause, doesn't matter what cause. So if you have metabolic acidosis, you're full of hydrogen. So what do you think the cell will do? The cell will say, oh, I'll help, I'll take some of your hydrogen. It takes the hydrogen, but as it takes the hydrogen, the cell starts to turn positive. And it knows that if it becomes positive, it's going to die. So hell hates it. So the cell says, oh my God, I must lose something positive. What's the chief positive thing inside that cell? It's potassium. In fact, potassium is around 145, 150 inside the cell. Sodium is around 10 to 20. Remember, outside the cell, potassium is 3.5 to 5. So the cell will kick potassium out. So therefore, metabolic acidosis led to hyperkalemia. Does that make sense? The second thing that happens is both potassium and hydrogen are lost in the distal parts of the tubule. So if I'm full of hydrogen, my hydrogen will run to the distal part of the tubule and kind of hold back potassium and say, I need to go out, you stay back, dude. So hydrogen will go out at the cost of potassium staying back. So potassium stays back. So metabolic acidosis is leading to hyperkalemia. Now, what if I'm not acidotic, but I'm hyperkalemic and I'm full of potassium? Again, my cell will heroically try to help me and take the potassium. But as it takes potassium, it says, oh my God, I already have a lot of potassium. More potassium, I'm going to turn positive and die. So I must kick something positive out. So the cell kicks out positively charged hydrogen. And therefore, hyperkalemia is leading to metabolic acidosis. Similarly, I'm full of potassium and both potassium and hydrogen go out in the collecting ducts, are secreted. So potassium runs there and just pushes back hydrogen and goes out in the tubule. So again, hyperkalemia leading to metabolic acidosis. There's a third thing that happens in the context of hyperkalemia. We constantly secrete hydrogen in our urine. We excrete hydrogen in the urine. Otherwise, we'll end up being acidotic and we could end up dead. Hydrogen needs some buffer in the urine. The chief buffer, I think, is ammonia, which grabs hydrogen, becomes ammonium, and then becomes ammonium chloride, NH4+, and goes out in the urine. Ammonia is generated in the proximal convoluted tubule from glutamine and amino acids. So glutaminase breaks glutamine, and then ammonia is secreted into the proximal tubule, and that eventually grabs hydrogen and goes out. Hyperkalemia inhibits the generation of ammonia in the proximal convoluted tubule. So if you don't have enough buffer in the urine, you can't excrete hydrogen in the urine and the hydrogen stays back. So there's a third way hyperkalemia leads to metabolic acidosis. So in a nutshell, hyperkalemia leads to metabolic acidosis and metabolic acidosis leads to hyperkalemia. And the converse you can think of, if you got alkalosis, so you're low in hydrogen, the cell has some hydrogen, it will excrete the hydrogen, throw the hydrogen out. But as it does that, it starts to kind of turn too negative, and then it will grab some extra potassium from outside the cell. So again, the point I'm trying to make is alkalosis will lead to hypokalemia. Having said all that, just remember when it comes to hypokalemia, it's kind of different. So hypokalemia can lead to alkalosis on the same lines that we have discussed, but hypokalemia can also come with acidosis. So hyperkalemia leads to metabolic acidosis. Metabolic acidosis leads to hyperkalemia. Metabolic alkalosis leads to hypokalemia. But when we come to hypokalemia can come with either metabolic acidosis or alkalosis. So what we'll do is we'll do one more talk where I'll talk about hypokalemia in the context of metabolic acidosis or alkalosis. Thank you.